Take the subway to your graduation, Dad said without looking up from his tablet. His fingers kept tapping the screen like what I was saying did not matter. We're taking your brother car shopping that morning. He's been waiting to get the new Tesla. I stood very still in our big, shiny kitchen. The windows were tall, and the counters sparkled. I was holding my thick, fancy graduation invitation in my hand. It had my name printed in gold letters. For years, for 4 whole years, I worked very hard at Columbia Business School. I studied every day. I stayed up late. I got straight A's in all my classes. At the same time, when everyone else was sleeping, I was building my own technology company on my laptop. And this was what they said to me. "It's my graduation," I said quietly. My voice sounded small in the big room. Mom was fixing a vase of fresh flowers on the counter. She did not look at me. "Callista, sweetheart, you know how important this is for Dorian," she said gently. "He just became a junior partner at his law firm. He needs to look successful. It's about making the right impression." They always talked about the right impression. My older brother Dorian went to Harvard and became a lawyer. He wore expensive suits and shiny shoes. He smiled perfectly in the pictures. He was always the one they showed off to friends. And me? I decided to study business and computer science. I turned down law school because I wanted to build things. They told family friends that I was still figuring things out. "The train goes straight to campus," Dad added, finally looking at me for 1 second. "It's not like you have anyone coming to watch you anyway. No fiancé. No job offer. You'll be fine. If only they knew. If only they ever asked how I paid for my apartment in Tribeca without their help. If they ever wondered how I could afford my rent, my clothes, my life. If they ever asked what those little projects were that kept me so busy at night. But they never asked. They never really cared." "Fine," I said, holding my invitation tightly. "Enjoy the car showroom." I left and went back to my apartment. It was quiet there. The city skyline shone outside my tall windows. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my desk. On my computer screen was the newest earnings report from my company, Nova Edge. It was a financial technology company I started from scratch during my first year of school. It helped people all over the world send and grow money using new digital tools. The numbers on the screen made me smile. Nova Edge had just passed 80 million users across Asia and Europe. My phone buzzed again and again. A big bank wanted to meet about working together. A famous magazine wanted to confirm my picture for their 30 Under 30 cover. Another company we were buying had just signed the final papers. I leaned back in my chair and remembered Dad's words. No job offer. If only he knew that his 24-year-old daughter was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in North America. If only he knew that I had met the Prime Minister of Singapore last month to talk about technology. If only he knew that my company was worth more than $14 billion. But no, they were busy picking floor mats and sound systems for Dorian's new car. The next morning, news stories were everywhere. Nova Edge unveils quantum blockchain technology. Fastest growing fintech unicorn in U.S. history. People on Wall Street were talking about my company. I barely had time to read the headlines before my phone buzzed again. It was Dorian. "Getting my Tesla Plaid today," he wrote. "Dad's going all out. Maybe you can take a ride someday. LOL. I walked to my window and looked down at my private garage. Inside, under soft lights, sat a rare silver Bugatti and a red Tesla Roadster. I bought the Tesla myself after meeting Elon Musk for drinks at a private club last month. But Dorian did not know that. 3 days before graduation, Mom called again. "Honey, about the ceremony," she said carefully. "We might be a little late. Dorian's Tesla needs a few upgrades that morning. Speakers and rims. You understand, right?" "Don't worry," I said calmly. "The subway runs on time. I'll get there just fine." What I did not tell her was that I had made special plans. This graduation would not be normal. This time they would see me. Graduation morning came bright and clear. The sky was blue and the air felt fresh. I dressed slowly and carefully. Under my graduation robe, I wore a navy blue Chanel suit that fit perfectly. I put on matching heels and picked up a sleek leather bag. Inside were my speech notes and the newest contract my company had signed at 3 o'clock that morning. When I stepped outside my building, my personal driver opened the door to a shiny black Maybach. "Good morning, Miss Carter," he said with a smile. "Everything ready for today?" "Perfect," I replied, sliding into the soft leather seat. At Columbia's campus, families were already arriving. Parents carried flowers. Cameras flashed. People laughed and hugged. I arrived early and sat quietly near the front. From where I sat, I could see the crowd clearly. Soon I spotted them. My parents and Dorian pulled up in his brand new Tesla. It gleamed in the sunlight. They stepped out looking proud and polished. Dorian adjusted his sunglasses. Mom smiled brightly. Dad looked pleased. They did not notice me walking past them. The ceremony began with music and long speeches. I sat with my hands folded, waiting. Dad was scrolling on his phone again. Mom was admiring Dorian's Tesla key like it was a trophy. Dorian was taking selfies with the car in the background. My phone buzzed softly. "Nice of you to show up," Dorian texted. "Too bad you had to take the subway." I smiled to myself. In just a few minutes, his Tesla would not seem so important. The dean walked up to the microphone and tapped it gently. The crowd grew quiet. "Before we begin giving out degrees," he said clearly, "we have a very special recognition today." My heart beat slowly and strongly. "Columbia Business School has many excellent students," he continued. "But today we honor someone truly extraordinary." Whispers filled the room. At just 24 years old, she has become the youngest self-made billionaire in tech history. She has changed the world of quantum computing, blockchain, and artificial intelligence. Her companies employ more than 20,000 people around the world. Gasps echoed across the audience. I looked toward my family. Dad's phone was no longer in his hand. Mom leaned forward, confused. Dorian's smile faded. "Please join me in celebrating Callista Arden, founder and CEO of Nova Edge Technologies, whose net worth this morning has surpassed $14.2 billion after her company's historic breakthrough." The entire auditorium exploded with applause. I stood up slowly. Large screens above the stage lit up with pictures of my journey. News headlines. Photos of me speaking at tech conferences. Images of me shaking hands with world leaders. The dean raised his hand for quiet again. "And she is not only a business leader," he said. "She is also the largest private donor in Columbia's history. Her recent gift of $2 billion will help grow our technology and research programs for generations." The crowd gasped again. More applause. I walked onto the stage. The bright lights felt warm on my face. From the stage, I could see my family clearly. Mom's graduation booklet had slipped from her hands. Dorian sat with his mouth open, still holding his Tesla key. Dad looked like he could not breathe. The dean turned to me kindly. "Miss Carter would like to say a few words." I stepped to the podium. My hands were steady. I slowly unzipped my graduation robe, showing the navy blue suit underneath. The room became very quiet. "Thank you," I began gently. 4 years ago, I came to Columbia with a dream and an idea. I had an algorithm and a laptop. I paused. While some people were preparing for interviews or buying their first cars, I said softly, glancing toward Dorian for just a moment, I was building something bigger. Quietly. Cameras flashed. "Nova Edge is not just a company," I continued. "It is a new way for people to connect, share, and grow. This morning, our new quantum computing breakthrough did not just make headlines. It changed what people believed was possible." I looked out at the crowd. Sometimes the person you think is behind is actually building something far ahead. The applause grew louder. I smiled calmly. This was never about the Tesla. It was never about showing off. It was about being seen. About being heard. About proving that quiet work, done with focus and heart, can grow into something the whole world cannot ignore. When I finished speaking, the entire room stood up. As I walked off the stage, I looked once more at my family. They finally saw me. And this was only the beginning. I picked up my phone and tapped the screen. Instantly, the big screens in the auditorium lit up with bright numbers and graphs. Nova Edge's stock price was shooting up higher and higher, faster than anyone could have imagined. The crowd gasped and murmured to each other. People whispered, pointed, and stared at the screens in disbelief. I turned back to the microphone and smiled. "Some people think that success only comes in one way," I said. "They think it means having a corner office, a fancy job, a shiny car, or a big title. But that's not true. Sometimes the most amazing things happen quietly, while nobody is looking." I looked around the room, then locked eyes with my family in the front row. "And yes," I said with a bright smile, "I did all of this while keeping perfect grades at school. No shortcuts. No handouts. Just hard work, discipline, and coding." Mom started crying, big happy tears rolling down her cheeks. Randon, my older brother, looked completely shocked. He sat frozen, staring at me like he had never really seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. I casually turned to the screen again and said, "Oh, and Dad, just so you know, with $14.2 billion, you could buy about 27,000 Teslas." The room exploded with laughter and clapping. Everyone cheered. I stepped back from the podium. Let them have their car keys. I was holding the future in my hands, and that felt amazing. I said to the audience, "If you want to see what happens when Dad finally asks me for a job, make sure you watch. The next part is coming, and you won't want to miss it." Even though I could buy any car I wanted, I sometimes took the subway. Not because I had to, my garage was full of cars faster than any racetrack, but because while everyone else was showing off their new leases, I was quietly building an empire. The applause from the auditorium still echoed in my ears as I walked backstage, feeling the excitement of the moment. I looked into the crowd and saw some important people. Executives from Google, Meta, and Stripe were all there, quietly nodding at me. They had always known my secret. My executive team, dressed in neat suits, were scattered among the rows. They were smiling, proud, like they were seeing a family reunion. When I returned to my seat, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Tyrion, my assistant. "Your Bugatti is ready outside for the photo shoot, Miss Carter." Also, the Wall Street Journal article just went live. Perfect timing. After the ceremony ended, I walked to the curb outside Columbia's main hall. The white Bugatti gleamed in the sunlight. Photographers were everywhere, snapping pictures. The headline on their cameras and phones read, "Columbia graduate and billionaire CEO Callista Arden surprises everyone." I watched my family slowly approach me, walking as if they were moving underwater. Mom's makeup had melted from crying. Dad, who usually walked with confidence, now looked uncertain. Dorian, my older brother, looked like a child who just realized Santa Claus was not real. "Callista," Mom's voice trembled. "How? When?" I handed my keys to the valet and calmly said, "While you were all focused on Dorian's next court case, I was building something bigger." Dad tried to speak, but I interrupted. "But you never told us. All those talks about your future," he said. "You mean all those times you thought I had no plan?" I said. His eyes moved nervously from me to the photographers nearby. "You never asked what I was really doing. You were too busy test driving Teslas." Dorian stepped forward, holding his car keys like they were a lifeline. "This is impossible. You're my little sister." "I'm also a billionaire," I said calmly. "CEO of 5 companies, founder of Nova Edge, and owner of the largest quantum computing network on Earth." I paused and looked at them. "And I did all this while you laughed at me for taking the subway." Tyrion appeared beside me with a tablet. "Carter, Mr. Musk is on the line. He wants to confirm next week's satellite meeting. Tell him I'll call back," I said without flinching. Dad's jaw dropped at the casual mention of Elon Musk. Mom was crying fresh tears. "Why didn't you tell us? We're your family. Would you have believed me?" I asked softly. "When I told you I was starting my first company, you told me to focus on finding a husband. When I mentioned my blockchain projects, Dad said I should find a real job like Dorian." My phone buzzed again. Nova Edge's stock was up another 12%. I looked back at my family and shrugged. I stopped trying to prove myself to people who weren't paying attention. They stood frozen as another camera flash lit up the street. And just like that, the world finally knew who I was. Even if my family hadn't. I said, "I wanted to prove something. Not just to you, but to everyone who thinks success only looks one way. While you were busy with appearances, I was busy building something amazing." Dad stepped closer, his voice soft and humble. "Callista, we were wrong." I nodded and smiled faintly. "I know, but that's not why I did this. I built Nova Edge because I saw a future no one else saw. The fact that you finally noticed me is just a bonus." Dorian was still staring at my Bugatti. I said, "All those times I offered you a ride, I had a driver." I shrugged. "And that car?" "Across the street, there's a McLaren behind the barricades and a few other cars. All mine." Their silence was thick. They were stunned. They had assumed I couldn't even afford normal transportation. I laughed lightly. "That part's educational." A group of tech executives was approaching. People from Stripe, Amazon, and even SpaceX were waiting to speak with me. My phone buzzed nonstop. The Wall Street Journal article exploded online. My LinkedIn crashed because so many people were visiting it. Requests for meetings and partnerships poured in before the ceremony even ended. "I have meetings," I said, starting to walk away. "But let's have dinner tonight. I'll send my jet to pick up the Grammy." Mom gasped. "Your jet?" "She knew all along," I said. "Grammy was my first investor." Mom's voice cracked. "Grammy knew? She actually asked what you were doing instead of just telling you what to do." As I walked away, Dad lightly caught my arm. His eyes, usually hard and judging, were soft now. "We were so wrong about you," he he whispered. We focused on the wrong things. Yes, I said simply. But success doesn't wait for approval. It doesn't ask permission. It just happens when you have vision and work hard. I handed him a sleek black business card. My name was engraved in silver, Callista Arden, CEO, Nova Edge Technologies. Dinner. 7 p.m. at my penthouse. The driver knows the way. I looked over my shoulder. Oh, Dorian, park your Tesla round back. The front is reserved for Forbes. The photo shoot started at 6 o'clock. As I walked away, surrounded by executives, I heard Dorian mutter, I can't believe my little sister is a billionaire. I smiled, remembering all the times my family had underestimated me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's becoming so right that they can never see you the same way again. That evening, my family sat speechless in my penthouse, looking out over Manhattan. I raised my glass. You were taking the subway, I said, while I quietly built an empire. I worked hard, focused, and rose without waiting for applause. I poured everyone a drink, and we sat together in silence for a moment. Then I began to talk about the work that had gone into Nova Edge. I started with just an idea, a tiny computer in my bedroom, and a lot of nights working alone. Nobody believed me at first. Some people laughed. But I never stopped believing. Mom wiped her tears. We had no idea, she said softly. I know, I said. And that's okay. I didn't do it to prove you wrong. I did it because I wanted to make something real. Something that could change the world. Something bigger than all of us. Dad looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in a long time. We focused on the wrong things, he said again. We were thinking about what everyone else would say, not what you were doing. Yes, I said again. Success doesn't care what anyone else thinks. You just have to see the future, work hard, and never give up. Dorian finally spoke, his voice quiet. I can't believe it. All this time, I thought I knew what was going on. You didn't, I said gently. But that's okay. Now you do. And that's enough. The family dinner that night was full of quiet smiles, soft laughter, and a new understanding. My parents were proud, but it wasn't just about pride. They finally understood what it meant to follow a dream, even when nobody else believes in it. And me, I knew the hardest part was done. I had shown the world who I was, and I had built something real. I had done it quietly, without applause and without shortcuts. And now, surrounded by my family and the city lights of Manhattan, I could finally enjoy the moment I had worked so hard for.